You want to move forward, but something inside you pulls you back. You set goals, then hesitate at the last moment. You see opportunities, and somehow miss them. What if this isn't weakness? What if your mind is doing this on purpose? And what if this pattern only appears in chosen ones? Stay with me, because once you recognize this, you can no longer unsee it. You are not here by accident. If this video found you, it is because something inside you is ready to be understood. Many chosen ones grow up believing they are their own worst enemy, not because they fail often, but because they see their own patterns more clearly than others do. You are intelligent, you are capable, you are deeply sensitive to energy, meaning, and consequence. Yet somehow you keep running into the same invisible walls. Not outside of you, inside of you, and that creates confusion. This is not a message about self-hate. This is not about fixing what is broken. This is about recognizing something few people ever realize. What you have called self-sabotage is actually self-protection wearing a disguise. Your mind did not turn against you. It adapted to keep you alive when you were not yet strong enough to carry what you were meant to become. Today, you are about to uncover 5 self-sabotage patterns that only chosen ones experience. Patterns that do not appear in ordinary minds because ordinary lives do not require this level of internal defense. And more importantly, you will understand why your mind created these behaviors. Not to limit you, not to punish you, but to preserve you until the right moment arrived. That moment is closer than you think. If this is resonating, do not brush it off. This recognition is not random, it is timing. Before we go deeper, pause for a second. If you feel seen right now, like this message is speaking directly to something you have never been able to explain, show that alignment. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment 99 below. 99 represents completion before elevation. It is the number that signals the end of one internal cycle and the preparation for the next level. By commenting it, you are consciously acknowledging that you are ready to move forward with awareness. Now stay with me, because the first pattern will change how you interpret every delay you've ever blamed yourself for. Here is where most chosen ones misjudge themselves, and this misunderstanding quietly costs them years. Overthinking does not show up when nothing is happening. It doesn't dominate your mind when life is stagnant, empty, or directionless. It appears precisely when movement begins, when a door cracks open, when momentum starts forming, when something finally responds to your effort. That is when the noise arrives. Suddenly, your thoughts multiply. Not shallow thoughts, but layered ones. Consequences, outcomes, long-term effects, hidden risks, alternate timelines. It feels like intelligence working overtime, but it is actually a survival reflex activating at full power. Chosen ones do not overthink randomly. They overthink when things start working because success changes your position in the world. It shifts how visible you become. It alters how much attention you draw. And long before this life, visibility carried a cost. Being seen meant being targeted. Being noticed meant being judged, challenged, or pressured into roles you were not ready to carry. Your nervous system remembers that, even if your conscious mind does not. So when progress appears, the mind intervenes. It begins to scan everything. It asks questions that seem logical on the surface but are fueled by something deeper. What if this goes wrong? What if I fail publicly? What if people expect more from me? What if I can't maintain this level? These are not doubts about ability. They are alarms about exposure. Your mind associates forward motion with risk, not because success is dangerous, but because success removes hiding places. And hiding once kept you safe, so the mind creates friction. It slows the pace. It introduces complexity. It stretches decisions longer than necessary, not to sabotage you, but to buy time. Time to assess. Time to feel grounded. Time to regain a sense of control before the next leap. This is why you can feel strangely calm during struggle, but unsettled during progress. Struggle is familiar territory. Breakthrough is unfamiliar terrain. And unfamiliar terrain triggers caution. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people never say out loud. If you were truly afraid of failing, you would quit early. But you don't. You hover at the edge of winning. You pause right before momentum turns irreversible. That pause is not weakness. It is a checkpoint your mind installed years ago to ask one question. Are we safe to be seen now? The tragedy is not the pause itself. The tragedy is mistaking it for incompetence. Because when you label yourself as broken, lazy, or inconsistent, you miss the real message. Your system is not trying to stop your destiny. It is asking for reassurance before stepping into it. And once you recognize that, everything changes. Because the next time overthinking shows up right before a breakthrough, you will realize something critical. This is not the signal to retreat. This is the signal that you are closer than ever, and in a moment, you'll see how this exact pattern quietly connects to another behavior you've never linked to it before, one that feels completely different on the surface but comes from the same hidden place. This pattern hides in plain sight, and because it sounds reasonable, it is rarely challenged. Chosen ones do not call it procrastination. They call it patience, preparation, timing, alignment. It feels wise. It feels mature. It feels spiritual. But underneath those words, something else is happening. Ordinary procrastination avoids effort. This does not. You are not avoiding work. You are avoiding initiation, because you understand something most people do not. Starting is not neutral. Starting creates a chain reaction. Once the first move is made, expectations shift, identity shifts, responsibility multiplies, and deep down, you know there is no clean exit after that point. This is why your intuition grows heavier right before you begin something meaningful. It is not fear of failure, it is awareness of consequence. You can feel the weight of what this step will demand from you before anyone else notices its importance. Your mind senses the long road attached to the first step, the late nights, the pressure to be consistent, the emotional exposure, the obligation to keep going even when motivation fades. Others see a project. You feel a commitment. Others see an opportunity. You feel a calling. And callings do not come with pause buttons. That is why the mind steps in and whispers, "Not yet." It does not scream, "Stop." It does not create panic. It delays softly. It convinces you to wait for more clarity, more resources, more confirmation. But the truth is, clarity rarely comes before movement. It comes because of it. Yet your system remembers something important. In the past, stepping forward without protection came at a cost. Once you began, you were expected to carry more than you could safely hold. So your mind learned a new strategy. Delay initiation until conditions feel controlled, until strength feels sufficient, until the inner world feels stable enough to absorb the weight of the path. This is self-preservation, not avoidance. And here is where it becomes dangerous, because the longer you wait for the perfect moment, the more starting begins to feel monumental. The task itself grows larger in your mind, not because it is harder, but because your identity has already attached meaning to it. You are not delaying a task, you are delaying a version of yourself, and that creates internal tension. You feel restless, yet frozen, inspired, yet unmoving, capable, yet paused. This contradiction drains energy quietly, and over time, you may begin to question your discipline, your drive, your seriousness. But the issue was never laziness. The issue was that your soul understood something your logic tried to ignore. Once you start, you cannot pretend you did not hear the call. Once you begin, the old life begins to dissolve. That is not a small thing. So the delay continues, not because you are weak, but because you are aware. And here is the turning point most chosen ones miss. The very fact that starting feels heavy is proof that it matters. Light things do not carry this resistance. Meaningless paths do not trigger this internal debate. The weight is not a warning to stop. It is confirmation of significance. And in the next pattern, you will see how this same instinct to preserve yourself shows up in a completely different way, one that doesn't delay action, but quietly removes people from the equation altogether. This pattern is one of the most misunderstood, even by the chosen ones themselves. From the outside, it looks like withdrawal, distance, silence. People may label it coldness, pride, or emotional unavailability. But what is actually happening is far more precise and far more learned. When pressure rises, chosen ones do not look outward. They turn inward, not dramatically, not loudly, quietly. Messages go unanswered. Invitations feel heavy. Even voices that once felt comforting begin to feel intrusive. This is not because you no longer care. It is because your system has been trained to associate vulnerability with risk. At some point in your life, you reached out when you were exposed. You shared when you were uncertain. You leaned when you were tired. And instead of support, you received misunderstanding, or dismissal, or judgment, or silence. Sometimes betrayal did not come as an attack, but as absence. You needed presence and received distance. Your mind recorded that moment, not emotionally, but structurally. It learned a rule that runs quietly beneath your awareness. When I am strong, connection is manageable. When I am under pressure, connection becomes dangerous. So when life intensifies, your instincts change. You stop explaining, you stop asking, you stop letting people see you mid-process. Not because you believe you are better alone, but because being alone feels predictable. Solitude has boundaries. Solitude does not interrupt you with opinions. Solitude does not ask you to justify your pace or your pain. Solitude cannot disappoint you. And for a nervous system that has been overwhelmed before, predictability feels like safety. Here is the part that creates confusion. You are not isolating because you lack social ability. In fact, many chosen ones are deeply empathetic, emotionally intelligent, and perceptive. You read people well. You sense shifts in tone, intention, and energy instantly. And that sensitivity becomes exhausting when you are already carrying internal pressure. So the mind simplifies the environment. Fewer voices, fewer variables, fewer emotional negotiations. Silence becomes a form of control, and control becomes relief. But this strategy has a cost, because while solitude protects you from disappointment, it also blocks nourishment. Support does not always arrive as solutions. Sometimes it arrives as resonance, as someone holding space without fixing, as a presence that reminds you that you are not carrying everything alone. Yet your system hesitates to risk that again. It says, handle it yourself. You've done it before. You survived worse. And you have. That is the problem. You survived so well that the mind assumes you must always do it that way. What once was a strength becomes a reflex. And over time, silence starts to feel normal, even when it is heavy. You convince yourself you need space to think, to recalibrate, to recharge. And sometimes you do. But sometimes, what you actually need is to be seen without explanation. This pattern does not mean you are meant to walk alone forever. It means you learned to walk alone when there was no one safe beside you. That distinction matters, because the moment you realize this isolation is not who you are, but what you adapted into, you gain choice again. And soon, you will recognize how this same instinct to protect yourself quietly reshapes the way you see your own gifts, your progress, and even your right to take up space. This pattern is subtle, almost invisible, and because it sounds humble, it is often praised instead of questioned. Chosen ones rarely announce their growth. They rarely pause to acknowledge how far they have come. Even when milestones are reached, the internal response is muted. You instinctively soften the moment. You minimize the achievement. You redirect the attention. You say it was luck, timing, coincidence, or help. You tell yourself you are still behind, still learning, still not quite there. And the strange part is that this does not come from low self-worth. It comes from memory. At some point, expressing confidence, talent, or insight made you stand out in ways that felt unsafe. Attention arrived before protection did. Expectations arrived before support did. Pressure arrived before preparation did. Being seen became overwhelming. So the mind made an adjustment. Not a dramatic one, a quiet one. It learned how to dim your light just enough to stay unnoticed while you continued to grow in private. This is why you often feel more comfortable being underestimated than being fully recognized. Underestimation gives you space. It lowers demands. It allows you to move without being watched too closely. And for someone whose nervous system associates attention with strain, shrinking feels like relief. The danger is not that you doubt your gifts. The danger is that you delay owning them. Because when you minimize your progress, you also minimize your readiness. You convince yourself you are still preparing when, in reality, you are already equipped. You postpone claiming authority because you remember how heavy it felt to be placed on a pedestal before you were grounded. So you stay smaller, not forever, but longer than necessary. And this creates a strange internal tension. On one level, you feel capable, aware, and expanding. On another, you keep yourself in waiting mode. You tell yourself there is more to learn before you can step forward, more healing before you can be visible, more proof before you can speak with certainty. But here is the truth that shifts everything. Your mind did not shrink you because you lacked power. It shrank you because your power was developing faster than your sense of safety around it. The reduction was strategic, temporary, protective. It was meant to buy time, not erase your influence. The problem is that over time, the strategy becomes habit. You forget that it was supposed to be released. You start to believe that staying small is who you are, rather than what you did to survive. And when that belief settles in, your growth begins to outpace your self-recognition. Others may see your impact before you do. Opportunities may appear that feel premature, even though you are ready for them. Compliments may feel uncomfortable, even inaccurate, because your internal image has not caught up with your reality. This is not false humility, it is delayed self-permission. And the moment you begin to sense that you are no longer shrinking to stay safe, but shrinking out of habit, something shifts, because the next pattern will reveal what happens when peace finally arrives, and why that is often when the mind creates noise instead of rest. This is the pattern that surprises almost everyone the first time they recognize it, because it contradicts what you consciously want. You say you desire peace, you work towards stability, you pray for calm, clarity, and rest. And yet, when life finally softens, something inside you tightens. The noise fades, but your mind grows louder. The external pressure lifts, but internal tension quietly rises. Calm does not feel comforting, it feels unfamiliar. Silence does not feel restful, it feels exposed. And peace, instead of settling you, triggers unease. This is not ingratitude, it is imprinting. There was a time when calm preceded disruption, when quiet moments were followed by sudden chaos, when safety was temporary and unpredictability was normal. Your system adapted to that rhythm. It learned how to function in alert mode. Hyper-awareness became second nature. Scanning for threats became automatic. Being relaxed felt irresponsible. So when life finally gives you space to breathe, the mind does not know how to rest there. It searches for something to fix, something to question, something to anticipate. It generates worries that feel urgent but have no clear source. It replays old conversations. It imagines future problems. It creates inner conflicts that feel real enough to keep you occupied. Not because you enjoy suffering, but because tension feels structured. Chaos feels known, and known feels safe. This is why chosen ones often say they feel strangely uncomfortable when everything is going well. Success can feel destabilizing. Peace can feel fragile. Happiness can feel like a setup. So the mind recreates friction, not to punish you, but to restore a familiar internal climate, one where vigilance makes sense, one where you know how to survive. The danger of this pattern is subtle. You may believe you are protecting yourself by staying mentally active, but what you are actually doing is training yourself to distrust ease. You begin to associate growth with stress and stability with boredom or threat, and over time, this can lead to self-generated obstacles that make life harder than it needs to be. You may delay enjoying your progress. You may feel guilty when things go smoothly. You may unconsciously invite complications just to feel grounded again. But here is the shift that begins to break this cycle. Peace is not the absence of danger. It is the presence of capacity. Your nervous system is learning something new now. That calm does not mean you are unprepared. That silence does not mean something bad is coming. That stability does not require constant vigilance to be maintained. This retraining does not happen overnight. At first, peace will feel boring, then uncomfortable, then suspicious, and then slowly nourishing. The mind has to unlearn the equation it relied on for survival. Familiar does not mean safe, it only means repeated. And the moment you recognize that your restlessness during calm is not intuition but conditioning, you reach a threshold. Because the next step is not about fighting these patterns anymore. It is about understanding what they were protecting you from and why you no longer need to live behind them. This is the moment everything you've heard locks into place, not as information, but as recognition. The shift that changes everything is this. These patterns were never your enemy. They were not flaws, weaknesses, or mistakes in your design. They were intelligent protection systems built during a chapter where survival mattered more than expansion. They kept you alert when being visible was dangerous. They slowed you down when responsibility would have crushed you. They isolated you when trust was fragile. They shrank you when your power was growing faster than your safety. They filled silence with noise when chaos was the only environment you knew how to endure. And they did their job perfectly. But protection has an expiration date. What saved you then cannot lead you now. Awareness is the turning point because once you see the pattern, it loses its authority, not through force, through clarity. You stop fighting yourself. You stop trying to fix what was never broken. You start listening differently. You recognize hesitation as a signal of significance, not inadequacy. You recognize delay as a call to ground yourself, not to retreat. You recognize silence as a habit, not a destiny. You recognize restlessness as conditioning, not intuition. And in that recognition, something powerful happens. You reclaim authorship over your inner world. You are no longer reacting from old memory. You are choosing from present strength. You are not behind. You are preparing in ways others never had to. You are not damaged. You are protected for a future that is arriving now. This is the line between surviving and stepping forward, between shrinking and standing, between being managed by your mind and being supported by it. Do not ignore this moment. Moments like this do not repeat often. They come when awareness meets readiness. If you feel it, anchor it. Comment this below and claim it clearly. I move forward without fighting myself. Let those words be a declaration, not a hope. And now listen closely. Stay aware. Stay present. Your past no longer needs guarding. Your destiny is ready for support. Step forward. Calm, clear, unstoppable.